The clock read 3:42 p.m. on a Thursday when the screen went gray. 1 second I was reading a vendor contract line by line. The next second my entire world inside that company vanished into a single sterile sentence. Your access permissions have been modified. Please contact your administrator. I refreshed the page. Nothing. I refreshed again. Nothing. 6 years of work. 6 years of trust. 6 years of my name on every major approval that had saved this division millions. Gone in the time it takes to blink. I did not know it yet, but that gray screen was not a glitch. It was the first move in a quiet war someone had already been waging against me for weeks. Someone inside that building had planned this moment down to the minute. Someone had signed a document 3 days earlier with my name buried inside it, and someone was about to use my own login credentials to try to destroy me from the inside out. If you have ever been pushed out of a room you helped build, stay with me. Because what happened over the next 14 days did not end with me losing my job. It ended with a locked security console, a $340,000 contract signed in panic, and a woman named Sylvia Crane walking out of a conference room she thought was mine. 15 minutes after the lockout, I was sitting across from Sylvia in her corner office. She did not look up when I entered. She kept her eyes locked on her laptop like I was already a memory she had chosen to forget. The approval chain has been restructured, she said. We are streamlining decision-making processes. Your role no longer requires capital authorization access. I kept my voice level. Which processes specifically? All vendor contracts over $50,000 now route directly through my office. She finally met my gaze. You are dead weight at this point, Dahlia. The division is moving toward centralized control. Your technical expertise is valued, but we need fewer bottlenecks. Bottlenecks. I noted the word. Not decision points. Not safeguards. Bottlenecks. When was this decided? The change went into effect this morning. She slid a printed memo across the desk. You will continue your current responsibilities minus expenditure approvals. Questions. I scanned the document, dated 3 days prior. Classification, internal operational adjustment. My name appeared, once buried in a list of 7 people whose authorization scopes had been rationalized. Who approved this change? Executive leadership. It is not personal, Dahlia, just organizational evolution. I stood, understood. I will adjust my workflows accordingly. The drive home felt longer than usual. I gripped the steering wheel tighter than I needed to. 6 years managing vendor relationships. 6 years of a flawless approval record. Contracts I had personally negotiated that saved the division over $2 million a year, and now overnight operational deadweight. But the memo bothered me. The date bothered me more. 3 days before implementation, and I had received 0 advance notice. No email chain. No meeting invite. No documentation explaining the rationale. Just a sudden lockout and a 10-minute conversation framed as housekeeping. Housekeeping does not happen at 3:42 on a Thursday afternoon. Housekeeping does not require a manual system push in the middle of the workday. Housekeeping does not need a printed memo dated 72 hours before anyone told you a word. I pulled into my driveway and made a decision. I would not cry. I would not vent. I would treat this like any other problem. Gather information first. React later. That evening, I logged into the internal system. My basic access remained intact. I navigated to the division shared drive and opened the contracts folder. 23 active vendor agreements ranging from software licenses to equipment procurement. I had personally negotiated 19 of them. I created a spreadsheet, column headers, vendor name, contract value, renewal date, approval history, performance notes. I filled it in pulling data from my email archives. Each entry included timestamps, dollar amounts, and approval workflow participants. 3 hours later, I had a complete map of every significant expenditure decision I had touched in 18 months. I had been the primary technical reviewer for infrastructure security software and cloud services. Sylvia signed final approvals, but the evaluation work had been mine. I exported the file and saved 3 copies. Local drive. Personal cloud storage. External hard drive. I did not know why I felt the need for 3 copies. But something in my chest was already whispering that one copy would not be enough. Something in my chest was already whispering that files inside that company might not stay where I left them. I was right. The next morning, an email appeared in my inbox at 6:18 in the morning. Before most people had even started their coffee. Subject, conduct clarification required. Sender, human resources. I opened it slowly. Recent system reviews have identified irregular access patterns associated with your user profile. Please confirm you have not shared credentials or accessed systems outside approved parameters. This is a routine compliance check. I read it twice. Irregular access patterns. The phrasing was deliberately vague, but the implication was sharp. Someone was suggesting I had violated policy. Someone was building a paper trail. Less than 24 hours after my access was stripped, and already there was a file being opened on me for something no one could describe with specifics. I replied immediately, keeping my tone professional and factual. I have never shared my credentials with anyone. All system access has been within my assigned responsibilities. Please provide specifics regarding which systems or timeframes are being reviewed so I can assist with clarification. No response came that day. Instead, I received a calendar invite for Monday morning. Subject, transition discussion. Attendees Sylvia Crane, Helen Park from HR and me. Location conference room, B. Duration 30 minutes. 30 minutes. That is the length of a meeting where someone tells you your life is about to change. I forwarded the invite to my personal email and took a screenshot. Over the weekend, I did not rest. I built. I pulled every email regarding vendor relationships. I documented every approval, every negotiated clause, every cost-saving measure. The file grew to 47 pages. I also checked my benefits portal. Status active, full-time. Nothing flagged. Nothing flagged yet. Monday arrived cold. I wore a gray suit and brought printouts of my timeline. I arrived at conference room B at exactly 9 a.m. Helen from HR was already seated. Sylvia entered 2 minutes later. Thanks for meeting with us, Dahlia, Helen began. Her voice was even, carefully neutral. We wanted to discuss some concerns that have come up regarding your recent activity. What concerns specifically? Helen opened the folder. As you know, your approval access was recently modified. Since that change, we have noted continued attempts to access procurement systems and vendor files. Can you explain why you are still engaging with these materials? I kept my hands folded on the table. I have been documenting my prior work to ensure smooth handoff to whoever assumes those responsibilities. Standard transition procedure, and the system access attempts. I accessed shared folders that remain within my permission levels. No procurement portals, no approval workflows, just historical contract files stored on the division drive. Sylvia leaned forward. The concern, Dahlia, is that you appear to be operating outside your revised scope. We need clarity on whether you understand your current role boundaries. I understand them completely, I said. My question is whether there's documentation outlining what those boundaries now include. Helen's expression did not shift. Your core responsibilities remain unchanged. Technical support, vendor relationship maintenance, documentation. The only modification was removal from financial approval chains. Then accessing contract files for documentation purposes falls within maintenance. Correct. A pause. Helen glanced at Sylvia. And in that glance, I saw everything. Two women who had walked into that room believing they were going to walk out with me, shaken. Two women who had not expected me to arrive with the exact language of the employee handbook already loaded on my tongue. We will consider this conversation a clarification, Helen said finally. Going forward, please limit file access to materials directly relevant to active assignments. Understood. The meeting ended at 9:23 a.m. I walked back to my desk and logged the conversation in a Word document. Date, time, tone, content. Every word from every mouth, every glance, every silence. Then I saved it with a timestamp. Because I knew this meeting was not the end of anything. This meeting was reconnaissance. They had been probing me to see how much I knew. To see if I would flinch. To see if I would apologize for something I had not done. I had not flinched. And that meant the next move would be bigger. That afternoon, I called Philip Okoye. He worked in IT infrastructure managing system permissions and access logs. We had collaborated on a cloud migration project 2 years earlier. He owed me nothing, but he had always been straightforward. Philip, I need to understand something technical, I said when he picked up. If someone's system access is modified, how quickly does that propagate? Depends. Core stuff like email and file shares instant. Specialized portals within an hour. Why? My procurement access was removed last Thursday at 3:42 p.m. Is that manual or automated? Philip paused. Manual. Automated changes happen overnight. Midday cutoffs mean someone submitted a ticket and an admin pushed it immediately. Would that ticket still exist? Absolutely. Every permission change generates a ticket with a requester, an approver, a timestamp, and a reason code. They are retained for 7 years per policy. Could you tell me who requested mine? Another pause. Longer this time? That is getting into audit territory, Dahlia. I could look. But if this is turning into an HR thing, I would rather not get pulled in. Fair enough. One last question. If someone accessed my profile after my permissions were removed, would that generate a log entry? Yes. Any login, any file access, any system interaction. It is all logged with IP address timestamp and device identifier. Thanks, Philip. I appreciate it. I hung up and sat back in my chair. Someone had manually removed my access midday Thursday. Someone had flagged irregular patterns by Friday morning. Someone had called a meeting to warn me about accessing files I could still legally reach. The pieces did not fit an efficiency restructuring. The pieces fit something far more deliberate. Someone was building a case. And I was the person the case was being built against. I opened my email and composed a message to Helen. Subject: Formal request for documentation. I am requesting written copies of the policy change that modified my approval access the specific systems I am prohibited from accessing and any formal complaints regarding my recent activity. Please provide these materials within 5 business days per Employee Handbook Section 4.7. I sent it before I could second-guess the decision. And then I waited. Wednesday morning brought a new development. And this one changed everything. I received a vendor call invite for that afternoon. Subject: Q1, Security Software Renewal. I was listed as optional. Sylvia was listed as required. I opened the email chain. The vendor, ArcLight Security Solutions, had sent a renewal proposal 2 weeks earlier. The contract was worth $340,000 annually, covering our network monitoring infrastructure. I had negotiated the original agreement. I had managed the relationship for 3 years. I knew every clause in that document better than I knew my own phone number. I checked my sent folder. I had received the vendor's initial outreach but never responded, because my access had been removed that day. I navigated to the shared contracts drive. The ArcLight file contained the renewal proposal along with a note from Sylvia dated Monday. Proceeding with standard renewal. No evaluation needed. Standard renewal. 3 words that meant accepting the vendor's terms without negotiation. 3 words that meant Sylvia had not read what she was about to sign. I pulled up the proposal. And that is when my stomach dropped. The pricing had increased 22% from our current rate. 2 service clauses had been modified to reduce our support hours and extend response times. I calculated quickly. Accepting these terms would cost Brightlight an additional $74,800 annually while reducing service quality. But those numbers were not the worst part. The worst part was buried deeper. In Section 7, Paragraph 3, a payment structure so aggressive that any competent reviewer would have flagged it inside 30 seconds. Sylvia had not flagged it. Sylvia was about to sign it. For 10 minutes, I debated. This was not my responsibility anymore. I had been explicitly removed. Inserting myself could be framed as overstepping. But I knew what would happen if this contract went through unchanged. Finance would flag the cost increase in 6 months. Security would complain about degraded support within 3. Someone would eventually ask why nobody caught these problems during renewal. And when that question got asked, I already knew whose name Sylvia would put in her mouth first. I drafted an email. Subject: ArcLight Renewal Technical Review Notes. I noticed the ArcLight renewal proceeding to signature. While I understand I am no longer in the approval workflow, I wanted to flag 2 technical concerns for your review before finalization. Pricing increased 22% above previous term without corresponding service improvements. And response time SLAs have been extended from 4 hours to 12 hours, which conflicts with our internal security incident protocols. Happy to provide detailed comparison if useful. I sent it at 11:47 a.m. I did not mention Section 7, Paragraph 3. I did not spell out the payment terms. Because I wanted her to ask. I wanted her to engage. I wanted her to say, "Send me the comparison." That was the door. All she had to do was walk through it. By 2 p.m. I still had not received a response. The vendor call was scheduled for 3 p.m. I watched the time tick closer. 2:15, 2:30, 2:45. Wondering if my email had been read or simply ignored. At 2:54 p.m., my desk phone rang. Sylvia's extension. I picked up. Dahlia, I got your email about ArcLight. I need you to understand something clearly. You are not part of this process anymore. I do not need your technical review, your comparison, or your input. This is exactly the kind of overreach HR warned you about. I kept my voice measured. I was trying to help avoid a costly mistake. You were trying to make yourself seem indispensable. It is not going to work. Stay in your lane. She hung up. I sat motionless for 30 seconds, processing the exchange. Then I opened a new document and transcribed the conversation word for word while it was fresh. Date, time, tone, content. At 3 p.m. exactly I heard Sylvia's voice through her office wall, animated, confident, warm, as she joined the vendor call and greeted the ArcLight representative like an old friend. I heard her laugh. I heard her say, "We are excited to move forward." At 4:47 p.m. I received an automated notification. Contract executed in system, ArcLight Security Solutions, $340,000 annually. Signed by Sylvia Crane. I added the notification to my documentation file, and then I waited. Because I knew what Section 7, Paragraph 3 said. And I knew Sylvia did not. Thursday passed quietly. Too quietly. I handled routine technical questions, updated some internal wikis, and avoided any procurement-related materials. I left at exactly 5 p.m. That night I could not sleep. Something inside me was counting down. I did not know exactly when the timer would run out, but I knew it was running. Friday began quietly. I arrived at 8:30 a.m., made coffee, settled into my inbox. At 9:16 a.m., the entire floor changed forever. Sylvia's office door slammed open with a sound that made 3 people stand up out of their chairs. "Where is everyone?" she shouted. "Where the hell is the security team?" I stood slowly, looking toward her office. Her face was flushed, a color I had never seen on her before. Somewhere between rage and panic. "Why did no one stop this?" she screamed, holding her laptop out in front of her like it was a bomb. 2 colleagues emerged from cubicles, confused. "Stop what?" one of them asked. Sylvia's eyes swept the room and landed on me. "You. Did you know about this?" "Know about what?" "ArcLight. They just locked us out of the monitoring console. The entire security platform is inaccessible. They are saying we violated the service agreement." I stepped into the hallway. My heart was pounding, but my face gave nothing away. "Which clause?" "Something about payment terms. They are demanding immediate payment of the full annual contract before they restore access. They claim we triggered an automatic suspension." I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not victory. Not satisfaction. Just the quiet weight of her prediction coming true exactly the way I had feared it would. "Did you review the payment terms in the renewal contract?" "Of course I reviewed it." "Did you compare them to our previous agreement?" Her expression flickered. "I accepted the standard renewal." "The vendor changed the payment structure," I said quietly. "The old contract allowed quarterly invoicing with net 60 payment terms. The new contract requires full upfront payment within 15 days of signature. If we do not pay, they can suspend service immediately." Sylvia stared at me. "That is insane. No vendor does that. ArcLight does now." It was in Section 7, Paragraph 3 of the renewal proposal. I would have caught it during technical review. Her face went white, then red. Then something in between that I have never seen on a human face before, or since. "You knew. You knew this would happen." I flagged technical concerns in my email Wednesday. "You told me to stay in my lane." You should have been clearer. I offered a detailed comparison. You declined. For a moment, she looked like she might throw the laptop against the wall. Instead, she spun toward another colleague. Get finance on the phone. Find out if we can cut a check today. She disappeared back into her office, door slamming behind her hard enough that a picture on the hallway wall tilted sideways. I returned to my desk, hands remarkably steady, and opened my documentation file. I added a new entry. 916A. Sylvia discovered ArcLight service suspension due to payment terms she approved without technical review. At 11:30 a.m., I received an email from Helen in HR. Please come to conference room B at 1 p.m. today. Sylvia Crane will be joining us. I printed my timeline. All 49 pages. Conference room B felt smaller than it had Monday. Helen sat in the same spot. Sylvia arrived 3 minutes late, her jaw so tight I could see the muscle twitching along the line of it. We need to discuss what happened with the ArcLight contract, Helen began. I waited. Sylvia spoke first. Her voice clipped. You intentionally withheld critical information about that renewal. You let me sign a contract you knew would cause a service disruption. I sent you an email identifying technical concerns, I replied. You told me I was overreaching and to stay in my lane. You should have been explicit about the payment terms. I offered a detailed comparison. You refused it. Helen raised a hand. Let us focus on the facts. Dahlia, did you review the ArcLight renewal proposal? I saw it Wednesday morning when I noticed the vendor call on my calendar. I was listed as optional. I reviewed the terms and identified 2 significant issues. Pricing increase and modified service terms. I sent Sylvia an email outlining these concerns. And you did not mention the payment structure. The payment structure falls under service terms. I specifically noted that response time SLAs conflicted with our internal protocols, which would have prompted a full contract review if anyone had engaged with my feedback. Sylvia leaned forward. This is exactly what I am talking about. You are playing word games. You knew that contract would fail and you said nothing. I met her eyes. I said plenty. You chose not to listen. Helen intervened. This situation is clearly complex. For now, let us table it until we can review all communications. Dahlia, please send me the email you sent to Sylvia regarding ArcLight. Of course. The meeting ended at 1:34 p.m. I returned to my desk and forwarded the ArcLight email to Helen along with Sylvia's phone response and the timestamp of the contract execution. I thought that was the worst part of the story. I was wrong. The worst part had not happened yet, and it was waiting for me at 3 p.m. At 3 p.m., my phone rang. Philip, from IT. Dahlia, I probably should not call, but you should know something. His voice was low. The kind of low that people use when they are looking over their shoulder while they talk. My stomach tightened. What kind of something? There has been unusual activity on your user profile. What kind of activity? Login attempts from an IP that does not match your usual devices. It happened twice last week, both after your approval access was removed. The attempts failed because your password was not used, but someone tried. Where did they originate? Internal network. Someone inside Brightlight. Can you tell who? Philip hesitated. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. The IP maps to an administrator workstation. Those are shared machines used by IT staff and anyone with elevated privileges. Like Sylvia, she has admin credentials for approving system changes. Yes. I closed my eyes briefly. Thanks, Philip. Be careful, Dahlia. This feels off. I hung up and sat very still. Someone had tried to access my profile after my permissions were removed. Someone with administrator privileges. Then HR had flagged irregular access patterns on my account. The math was simple. The math was ugly. Someone had tried to log into my account not to steal from me, but to create activity that could be blamed on me. Someone had tried to manufacture evidence of a policy violation using the credentials of the very person who kept insisting I had one. If Philip had not noticed those failed attempts, they would have kept trying. And eventually, one of those attempts would not have failed. And when investigators finally opened my file, they would have found a trail of activity that looked exactly like a woman quietly stealing from her own company on her way out the door. I opened a new document and began writing a formal complaint. I documented the timeline. Access removal, Failed login attempts, HR inquiry, meeting warnings, ArcLight failure, and Philip's information about administrator-level attempts. I saved it as system access irregularities formal complaint. Then, I called the one person I trusted to understand the technical and legal implications of what I was seeing. Natasha Irving, employment attorney. We had met at a conference 4 years ago. Natasha, I need advice, I said when she answered. I think my employer is building a termination case and manipulating system records to support it. Tell me everything. I walked her through it. The access removal, the allegations, the login attempts, the ArcLight situation. She was silent for a long moment. Dahlia, this is retaliation. You were removed from a responsibility, tried to provide value, and now they are framing you as insubordinate. The login attempts are especially concerning. If someone used administrator credentials to access your profile, they could create activity that looks like violations. What do I do? 3 things immediately. First, send a formal preservation notice to HR and IT demanding all system logs and communications involving your profile be preserved. Second, document every interaction. Third, do not resign, do not sign anything, and do not have unrecorded conversations. Can they fire me? They can try. But if they do, we will have grounds for a retaliation claim. The timing is too convenient, and the system irregularities suggest intent. Send that preservation notice today. I thanked her and hung up. At 4:47 p.m., I sent an email to Helen and copied the IT director. Subject: formal preservation notice system records. I am formally requesting that Bright Light Technologies preserve all system access logs, permission change records, email communications, and administrator activity associated with my user profile from October 1st through present. This preservation request is made in anticipation of potential legal proceedings. Please confirm receipt within 24 hours. I sent it before I could hesitate. Within an hour, I received a curt acknowledgement from Helen. Received. IT has been notified. That weekend, I did not sleep well. I kept replaying the ArcLight situation, wondering if I had made the right choice by sending that first email. Part of me wished I had said nothing, but silence would have been worse. Sylvia would have found another way to blame me, another angle to justify whatever end game she was building toward. Because now I understood what the end game was. I was not just being pushed out, I was being framed. Someone had decided that firing me was not enough. Someone had decided that I needed to leave carrying the weight of a violation I never committed. Someone had decided that when future employers called for a reference, the answer needed to be complicated. Monday morning, I found a calendar invite waiting. Subject: compliance review, vendor relationship management. Attendees: Helen, Sylvia, Philip, and someone new. Lawrence Ketting, Chief Compliance Officer. Wednesday at 10 a.m. I forwarded it to Natasha. Her response came within minutes. Do not attend this meeting without me. I am available Wednesday and will join remotely. Forward me all documentation you have compiled. I sent her everything. The timeline, the emails, the contract files, Philip's information about the login attempts, my formal preservation notice. Tuesday passed in surreal calm. I processed routine work, avoided Sylvia, and waited. Wednesday arrived, gray and drizzling. I wore navy and brought my portfolio containing everything I had sent Natasha. At 9:55 a.m., I joined the video conference. The screen populated quickly, Helen in one box, Sylvia in another, her lips pressed into a line so thin it looked drawn on. Philip looking uncomfortable in a third, his eyes flicking around the frame like he was already regretting agreeing to be there. Lawrence Keating, silver-haired and stone-faced, in the largest frame. At 10 a.m., exactly a fifth box appeared. Natasha Irving. Helen blinked. I am sorry, who are you? Natasha Irving, counsel for Dahlia Mathers. I will be participating in this meeting to ensure accurate documentation of all statements. Sylvia's expression did not change, but her posture did. Just slightly. Just enough for someone who had been watching her for 6 years to notice. Lawrence's expression did not change at all. That is certainly your right. Let us proceed. This meeting has been convened to review concerns regarding vendor relationship management protocols and potential policy violations. He pulled up a document on screen share. Ms. Mathers, our records show that on November 14th, You access procurement files and vendor contracts outside your authorized scope. Can you explain this activity? I accessed shared division files that remain within my permission levels. I was documenting historical work for transition purposes. And on November 16th, you inserted yourself into an active contract negotiation after being explicitly removed from approval workflows. Correct. I provided technical feedback on a renewal contract that contained unfavorable terms. Feedback that was not requested and fell outside your revised responsibilities. Natasha's voice cut in. Calm. Precise. The kind of voice that has ended careers in courtrooms. Mr. Keating, has Ms. Mathers been provided with written documentation outlining her current role boundaries and which specific activities are prohibited? Lawrence paused. Her responsibilities are consistent with her job description minus approval authority. That is not what I asked. Has she received explicit written guidance on what constitutes prohibited activity? The expectation is that employees understand scope changes when formally notified, so the answer is no. She was told her approval access was removed, but was never provided clear parameters for her ongoing work. The silence stretched for 3 seconds. In a meeting like that, 3 seconds is an eternity. Lawrence shifted. Let us move to the compliance matter. Our team has identified irregular activity associated with Ms. Mathers' account. Philip, can you walk us through what you found? Philip's face tightened. He looked directly at the camera. Not at Sylvia, not at Helen. At the camera. On November 10th and November 12th, there were 2 failed login attempts on Dahlia's profile. Both attempts originated from an administrator workstation within our internal network. And what does that indicate? It indicates someone with elevated privileges attempted to access her account using incorrect credentials. Natasha leaned forward slightly. Mr. Oakloy, would those administrator workstations log which user was signed in at the time of the attempts? Philip nodded. Yes. Every admin session is tied to a specific user credential. And who was logged into the administrator workstation during those 2 attempts? Philip glanced at Sylvia's video box, just for a second. Then back to the camera. The room stopped breathing. Sylvia Crane. The silence that followed was absolute. Not the silence of a pause. The silence of a bridge collapsing underneath someone in real time. Sylvia's face went rigid. That is absurd. I never tried to access Dahlia's account. The logs show your credentials, Philip said quietly. Time-stamped November 10th at 4:52 p.m. and November 12th at 8:14 a.m., both from Admin Workstation 3. Lawrence's expression remained controlled, but his posture shifted. He sat forward. Just an inch. It was enough. Why would you attempt to access Ms. Mathers' profile? I did not. Someone must have used my credentials. Natasha's tone stayed even. Ms. Crane, did you report your credentials as compromised? No, because they were not. Then either you attempted the access yourself or you shared your credentials with someone else. Both would constitute policy violations. Sylvia's jaw clenched so hard I could see it through the camera. This is being taken completely out of context. Lawrence raised a hand. Let us table this for now. Ms. Mathers, can you explain why you flagged concerns about the ArcLight contract after being removed from procurement? I noticed unfavorable terms that would cost Brightlight additional money and reduce service quality. I sent a summary to Ms. Crane offering detailed analysis. She declined and told me to stay in my lane. And you did not push further. I had been explicitly told I was overreaching. I documented my concerns and stepped back. Sylvia cut in, voice rising. You knew that contract would fail. You let me sign it anyway. I provided you every opportunity to review it properly. You chose not to. Lawrence's eyes narrowed slightly. Let us pull the contract on screen. He opened the document. The ArcLight renewal populated. He scrolled to Section 7. Payment terms. He read out loud. Full annual payment due within 15 days of execution. Failure triggers automatic service suspension. He looked up. Ms. Crane, you approved this. I accepted a standard renewal. This is not standard. Our typical contracts allow quarterly invoicing. This is a significant deviation. He scrolled further. Response time SLA extended to 12 hours. Previous specified 4 hours. Ms. Mathers, you identified these issues. Yes, in my email dated November 16th at 11:47 a.m. Lawrence pulled up the email on screen. He read it silently. Every eye on that call watched him read it. Then he looked at Sylvia. This email clearly flags pricing and service concerns. He responded by telling Ms. Mathers she was overreaching. Sylvia's face flushed. She was. She had been removed from approvals and was inserting herself where she did not belong. She was attempting to prevent a compliance failure. This contract violates our internal procurement policy requiring cost-benefit analysis for any agreement exceeding $250,000. You bypassed that entirely. I was streamlining decision-making. You were circumventing controls. Lawrence's voice remained flat, but the words landed like weights being set down one after another on the table between them. And now, Bright Light is facing a $340,000 payment demand with suspended security services. The client who contracts our services to ensure their data security has been notified of the disruption. They are extremely unhappy. Sylvia opened her mouth, then closed it. She had no answer. For the first time since I had known her, she had no answer. Lawrence turned back to his screen. Let me be clear. This meeting was convened to review Ms. Mather's conduct. What I am seeing is administrative overreach, attempted unauthorized access to employee accounts, and a procurement failure exposing Bright Light to financial and reputational risk. He looked at Sylvia. You will provide written explanation for the login attempts by end of business today. You will also document your decision to bypass technical review on the ArcLight contract. HR will conduct a full review of your recent administrative actions. Sylvia's video box went dark. She had left the meeting. Not with words. Not with an apology. Just a black rectangle where her face used to be. Lawrence's attention shifted to me. Miss Mathers, you will continue your current responsibilities pending resolution of this review. Your access permissions will be reevaluated once we determine appropriate workflows going forward. Understood. Meeting adjourned. The video boxes blinked out one by one. Natasha's remained. You did well, she said. Do not celebrate yet. But this shifted in your favor. What happens now? They will investigate. Sylvia will either explain or she will not. Either way, you are no longer the target. Keep documenting and let me know if anything develops. I thanked her and closed the laptop. For the first time in 2 weeks, I felt like I could breathe. 3 days later, I received an email from Lawrence Ketting. Following comprehensive review, Bright Light Technologies has determined that approval workflow modifications were implemented without adequate documentation or stakeholder consultation. Your procurement access will be reinstated effective immediately. Additionally, all vendor contracts over $100,000 will now require technical review prior to execution. We appreciate your diligence in identifying the ArcLight contract issues. I read it twice. Then I saved it in 3 places. That afternoon, Sylvia's office remained dark. Her nameplate was gone from the door. I never saw her again. I want to tell you I felt triumphant when I walked past that empty office. I want to tell you I felt vindicated. I did not. I felt tired. I felt the strange hollow weight of a person who had spent 14 days convinced that everything she had built could be erased by someone else's signature. I felt the ache of realizing that 6 years of good work had almost not been enough. That being right had almost not been enough. That the only reason I was still standing was because I had chosen at 30:42 on a Thursday afternoon to keep receipts instead of keep the peace. The ArcLight situation resolved within a week. Finance negotiated a payment plan. Services were restored. The client relationship survived. Barely. And Bright Light implemented new contract review protocols. I returned to my full responsibilities quietly without fanfare. I negotiated vendor agreements, evaluated proposals, and maintained relationships I had built over 6 years. And every evening I backed up my files to 3 separate locations. Because I had learned something in those 2 weeks that I want you to carry out of this story with you tonight. If someone in your life is quietly trying to erase you, they are not going to send a warning. They are going to send a gray screen, a rewritten memo, a phrase like, dead weight, set across a desk without eye contact. They are going to make you doubt yourself before they make anyone else doubt you. And the only defense against that kind of erasure is documentation. Records. Timestamps. Screenshots. Copies in 3 places. A quiet notebook that no one knows you keep. Systems do not lie. Logs do not care about hierarchy. Timestamps do not soften themselves for the people signing your paychecks, and when someone finally opens the file they built against you, the only thing that will save you is being too well documented to disappear. Sylvia thought she was removing a bottleneck. What she was actually removing was the only person in the building who read every clause. What she was actually removing was the only person who would have told her that Section 7 Paragraph 3 was a trap. She learned that lesson in a video conference on a gray Wednesday morning. I hope you never have to learn it the way she did. I hope you never have to learn it the way I did either. But if you were sitting there right now watching this and something inside you is whispering that someone at your job is quietly rearranging the ground beneath your feet, listen to that whisper. Open a new document tonight. Start a timeline. Save it in 3 places. Do not tell anyone. Just build the record. Because one day someone is going to sit across from you and slide a printed memo across a desk. And they are going to expect you to leave quietly. And the only question that will matter in that moment is whether you spent the last 6 months keeping receipts or keeping the peace. Keep the receipts. Every single time. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of something you lived through or something you are living through right now, do me one small favor. Tap that like button so more people who need to hear this story can find it. Hit subscribe so the next story lands in your feed the moment it goes live. And then scroll down to the comments and tell me one thing. Have you ever been the person in the room they underestimated? Have you ever been the quiet one they thought would disappear without a fight? I read every comment, and your story might be the one that gives someone else the courage to open their own document tonight and start their own timeline. Stay quiet, stay documented, and never let anyone convince you that being thorough is the same thing as being a bottleneck. I will see you in the next story.